How does my intro go? Hey, what's up you guys? Nick here. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Nick. I'm a professional photographer. I've been shooting professionally for the last 3 years, though I've had a camera in my hand for the last 16, and joining me today is...
I am Nick Del Duca.
Nick Del Duca has a YouTube channel. I will link that down in the description. You guys might remember him from last week's video where we did some street photography and I went over the Nikon D5100 settings, and I will link that video right up there. We're kind of doing an interview. You guys get to hear a lot of my opinions, my thoughts, things that I do in photography that maybe other people don't. So it's kind of cool to get another person's view on photography, or you know, what got them motivated into photography. We all know that it was my grandfather that got me into photography, and it's kind of cool to get someone else's ideas, views, and thoughts on photography, because the creative process is very individual. Everyone has their own reasons for doing things, why they do them, and the equipment they use when it comes to photography. Don't mind the noise, there's some traffic. We are in downtown Loveland again. So let's get this started. Nick, what really got you into photography originally?
Well, my dad was pretty into photography, and he had some old Minolta film cameras, and I always used to just think that they were really cool. And my parents, when I was growing up, like, they got me the little kids Fisher-Price cameras and that type of thing.
I had some of those.
So, yeah, my dad has pictures of me with like one of the red and blue Fisher-Price cameras, you know, and my mom actually recently gave me some shots that I took, and it was like of a car window or like just something random in the house or whatever, but yeah, that was kind of my start. You know, I just kind of grew up with my dad taking pictures all the time, and you know, that kind of gave me the bug as a child.
A little shutter bug?
Yeah.
There's car windows. You're all like doing street photography as a small child?
Yeah. Like, I was, one of the photos was like the emblem of, it was like a 60s Chevy. And like right in the dorsal there was like a GM or Chevy emblem or something on it, and I like had taken like a picture of that. That's my little Fisher-Price camera.
That's pretty cool actually, especially to get those photos after so long. As you can see, we moved the camera a little bit closer just because of the traffic noise. But so your first camera was one of those little Fisher-Price ones. I think mine was a Colorado Rockies 35mm windy one.
Yeah.
So my grandpa gave me one of those, and yeah, when I got my photos back from my mom that she kept, it was like a ditch. Like with water running in it. Like the sunflowers were out of focus, but the ditch was in focus. She's like, you just took pictures of dirt, that's why I took your camera away. So what was your first like real camera? Like your first experience with, like, I hate to say real camera because I'm a firm believer that you shoot with what you have and you can still make art with that, but like, what would you consider the first camera you took seriously?
So I, for a long time, like really begged my parents to let me get a digital camera. And this was back when digital cameras were like in their infancy. So I remember going to Circuit City in Fort Collins with my mom and spending like $400 on a 4-megapixel HP point and shoot.
Oh man.
Camera.
Like, do you still have that camera?
No, I don't.
Oh man.
It had an issue. Like, so it basically got destroyed after not too long, because when you would pull it out of the bag, like the power button was really sensitive and the lens would extend out of it, and then it would just like grind the gears inside of it. So I ended up having 2 of them because we sent one back. But like at some point, like the second one broke. But kind of the first thing that I did with that camera was, and I would say it was probably when I was like maybe 10 or so, 10, 12, something like that, is my dad was always part of a car club.
Yeah.
And we would go to the car meets pretty much anywhere across the United States. And I remember like the first time I had that camera, I went with my dad to the car meets and I was just going crazy, you know, taking the photos. And then I remember like the president of the club, when we sent all the photos, he was like, oh, can I print these in like our newsletter? Because they're actually really good. So like 10, 12-year-old me was like, yeah, I'm gonna get my photos printed in like this car club newsletter. It was like the greatest thing ever. But that kind of like originally was what got me thinking like, okay, you know, like maybe this is something I want to do, you know? So
no, that's fantastic. So what was your first professional grade? DSLR or mirrorless? I know we've talked about this.
Yeah, so kind of after that, I decided that I wanted something a little bit nicer. So again, I was, you know, like, hey, can I spend my birthday, Christmas, any spare money you have, you know? And I ended up buying a Canon Rebel XT, which was, I think it was either the very first or second digital SLR that Canon ever made. It was a pretty standard digital SLR, you know, like if you think about it, the way that it functioned is not all that much different than the DSLRs now. I mean, you don't have like the live view, it didn't shoot any video, and like the max ISO was 1600. But you know, like it was fine, you know, like it used the same principles as anything else, you know, setting your aperture and f-stop and ISO, and it was pretty much just like a regular digital SLR.
Go out and shoot.
Yeah, and that was probably when I was 14-ish when I got that.
We actually have our hands on one of those. We're going to be doing some videos on that exact camera, you guys. They're like 15 bucks now, by the way. You progressed. You went from the Fisher Price, little, what, 35 millimeter?
Yeah. 35
millimeter to the point and shoot HP. That's really similar to the one I went to the DSLR, the Sony, the Canon DSLR, the XT. What was that? What megapixel? Was that 6, 7?
That one was 8.
8 megapixel.
Yeah. So
it had the Nikon D70 beat by 2 megapixel.
Yep.
And we actually did a video on the D70, you guys. I will link that right up there from our budget photography shoot. Your experience, you went from kind of artsy window pictures to taking pictures of cars. Well, what got you into portrait photography?
So this is probably not like the most glamorous thing. A couple years ago, I was deciding that I was really going to get into photography seriously again. So, you know, like I did all the research online, figured out what camera I wanted, you know, like, and did that, right? And then I would sit at my house with my camera and be like, I've taken pictures of everything that's at my house, you know, which probably isn't true, you know, and, you know, like I don't have time to go on like a trip somewhere, like up in the mountains, take video or take photos or videos or whatever. And so I was like, you know what are the things that I've never done before? And one of them was portrait photography. And so I started looking into it, and I started, you know, researching it, and I realized, you know, like, you have to find models and that type of thing. So it was like, all right, you know, like, let's do this. So, which, I mean, I guess, like, I considered it back, because I, you know, like, there were periods back when I was in high school when I had my second digital SLR, which was a Canon Rebel T1i.
That's an old camera.
Yeah, and I did like a couple shoots with people, but, you know, like, I'm not the most outgoing person, and, you know, like, it's definitely taken a lot to get to the point where I'm comfortable with doing work with models.
Yeah.
But so yeah, like, I just was like, screw it, I'm gonna see if I can find a model in my area and see if they'd be willing to shoot with me, even though I have nothing in my portfolio. And fortunately, I found a really cool model who, you know, like, thought that I was enthusiastic enough to shoot with me. So we went and shot at her house in her backyard, and the photos turned out pretty good. And that was kind of the start of my whole, like, portrait photography type thing.
Do you have those photos?
Oh yeah.
So we're gonna throw one of those photos up, you guys, from that very first portrait shoot. You guys have seen photos from my first portrait shoot. Check it out. So, this one we'll probably get a lot of flack for. Mirrorless or DSLR?
Oh,
I know the answer to this.
Mirrorless, absolutely.
What do you like about the mirrorless camera systems?
I mean, it's just, to me, it seems like the evolution of photography. You know, like, it's kind of like, you do things the old way for a long time, and then it's the evolution. Like, the way that I look at it is, you know, like, a DSLR is still basically the same principle as a film camera.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for the mirror. You know, like, in a DSLR, like, if you think about it, like, the reason the mirror exists is because there was film.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I mean, I kind of feel like the mirrorless is just the evolution of photography. And I feel like there are so many advantages to mirrorless at this point that, you know, like if you're not shooting it, you're kind of, you know, stuck in the past.
Yeah, so Nikon Z, the new Canon, or Sony?
Sony.
Sony?
Sure. But, I mean, I will say just Sony because that's what I shoot,
yeah.
You know, and the thing that would hold me back from Canon or Nikon is the fact that both Nikon and Canon came out with new glass for their mirrorless. So, I mean, you can use the old glass with an adapter, but it's like that thick.
Buy an adapter.
You know, like you have to buy an adapter, and you know, like that's fine. But you know, like Sony started the mirrorless. Sony is fantastic. You know, like their cameras are great, and there's tons of glass. Like you can go out and you know you can get an 85mm Rokinon portrait lens for like $400, and they're tack sharp. They look great. You know, like whereas if you're like, oh, I want to get an 85mm portrait lens for my new, you know, Canon mirrorless, like you're gonna be spending like $1,000 or more dollars. Like I think some of the prime RF glass for Canon is like $2,000 for like a 85mm lens. So, you know, like I just feel like Sony got ahead of the curve and they got themselves established, so they got all the third-party lens support, so it's just a way cheaper thing to get into.
So if you're getting into mirrorless, probably Sony because the glass is there.
Yeah, and that's what got me into Sony in the first place. And I mean, I guess when I got started in mirrorless, really it was just you have Sony.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't anything out from Nikon or Canon, like right at the point where I jumped in. So
jumped in early then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know you gotta do what you gotta do. But like you know, even if I was getting in now, knowing what I know and not having anything, I would probably still buy Sony again and buy almost all the same lenses that I have now.
And that kind of goes with the point that I've made in several videos, you guys, where you buy with what you have. So if you have a bunch of Nikon glass already, you have a bunch of Canon glass already, the mirrorless systems for those cameras aren't necessarily going to work, because when you put that adapter on, you're increasing your focal length, you're changing the dimensions of your lens. So if you want to go mirrorless, sounds like Sony's the way to go, even if you already use Canon or Nikon, because the third-party support is there. And you guys know how much I love budget-friendly lenses. So that segues us in. What's your go-to lens?
So my go-to lens is the Sigma 24-70 f2.8 art lens.
We're gonna link that down below, you guys.
And that is probably the best like zoom lens that I've ever used, because it's sharp wide open. It's sharp from 24mm to 70mm. Like it doesn't really have any like any weak points. Like a lot of zoom lenses, you're like, oh, it's like not sharp at 70mm.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, you have to stop down to like f4 before it's sharp. Like that one. Like, and that's the thing that I'm realizing is happening more and more often now, is mirrorless lenses, like the newer designs from Sony and Nikon and Canon, like all those for sure, but like even the third parties like Tamron and Sigma, like their zoom lenses now, you know, it's not, and that's, I guess, like that almost for me goes with the new way of thinking, you know, like, because if someone's been in the photography business for like a long time, and you know, like it's just common knowledge that if you get a zoom lens, like it's going to have a pretty severe disadvantage at some point.
Oh yeah,
right?
even the f-stop changes. You zoom fully in, you don't always have that full range of f-stop. My Tamron, for example, will go down to 3.4 at 28mm, but when I extend that to 100mm, 5.6 is the lowest f-stop I get out of it.
Yeah.
So it almost sounds like mirrorless is almost like the modern rangefinder. So rangefinders are better cameras than DSLRs. They really are. They're harder to use because you got to use this like weird periscope thing on top. I love those cameras. And they always took much sharper, better images because they didn't have the mirror in the way. So we might be getting a mirrorless to review on the channel. I'll let you guys know. So we had an interview a while back with Ariana. Actually, it was almost a year now, and I'll link that down in the description. And she talked about some modeling horror stories, and we've discussed that in the past, but what are some horror stories with a model that you've had? You don't have to name any names.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I've had pretty good luck with the models that I've worked with, but, like, the horror story part of it is kind of, like, more on my own personal side of it. And, you know, it's just that I sometimes will have like really bad anxiety about some things. So, you know, it was kind of one of my first shoots, and I was working with a model I'd worked with once before, and like the shoot before with that model had gone like fantastic, you know, like, and it was almost like a shoot where I was like, I can't top this, you know, like, which is a stupid thing to think when you're first getting into. It was a morning shoot, so it was like first thing in the morning, and I was like so stressed out that I didn't sleep the night before.
Oh, that's the worst.
So I ended up going on a shoot with the model, and we did it, and the photos were okay, you know, like, so they weren't as good as the previous shoots, or they're not as good as the shoots after, but, you know, like, they were okay. Like, if it was something, you know, like, their photos, I won't tell you which one it is, but the photos are on my Instagram, you know, so it's like, that kind of helped me a little bit to, you know, realize, you know, like, okay, I can do this. This wasn't like a fluke, you know, like, and that's something stupid that I had in my head for a long time is, you know, like, every time I'd go out on a shoot, I'd come back and I'd have really good images, you know, I'd have plenty of images that I was happy to share.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, I always had like this little fear, you know, like, oh, I'm not going to get anything good. I'm never going to get anything good. And that was completely stupid, but that took a little time to get over.
I think that's an anxiety we all have, because I still, it doesn't matter if it's someone I've worked with a ton of times, if it's someone new, if it's anything, like even going out to do landscape photography, you know, you got a knot in your stomach, and it's that stage fright beforehand, and as soon as you're into it and your mind is on your camera settings and the lighting and posing, it just kind of goes away.
Yeah.
Until you look at the images and realize they're all out of focus. That's happened to me before. So, what's been your favorite shoot? And we'll show some images from that shoot.
You know, like, I think still my favorite shoot has got to be a cosplay shoot I did in the snow. That's
awesome.
It was something that the model and I had been talking about for a while, and it was in winter, and, you know, like, we were both like really wanting to shoot, and we just decided one day, you know, like, okay, the next morning that, like, we're gonna look at when we're off, we're gonna look at, you know, like, the weather report, and if it's gonna snow, you know, we're gonna go out and shoot. So, you know, one morning it was gonna snow, and we both were off work, and we had a spot already picked out for it, and we just went and we shot for probably 3 hours in the snow.
When you're at the mercy of the weather, that's kind of what you have to do. And
yeah, the photos turned out great because, you know, like, it was so snowy that day that it was like the whole entire, like, sky was a softbox.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you couldn't get a bad shot at from any direction.
Oh yeah, I love overcast days. Overcast days are just perfect for photography.
Yeah, but even like adding the snow to it, because the snow lights up white in the sky, it's just like crazy light. It's amazing.
Such soft.
So yeah, that's still probably my most memorable and favorite.
What's your worst photo?
The shoot that's coming to mind is a shoot where I felt like I was limited on the direction that I could shoot, and I had some really funky, like, side lighting coming on, so, like, one side of the model's face was really dark and one side was pretty bright, and I had to do, like, a lot of post-processing to, like, even make the images usable.
Yeah.
And you would never know, because there's so much headroom in RAW files nowadays, but, like, I was pretty disappointed in myself that I didn't, like, realize that and try to change things up, because I was, like, so focused on I want to shoot at exactly this location, you know, like, shoot exactly this direction, that I didn't think about, you know, like, oh, maybe the lighting's not going to be great at the time that you're going to shoot, or, you know, like, even if it was that, because that shoot, like, kind of had to be at a specific time, but, you know, like, I could have done something different, you know, but I was, like, so focused, like, this is what I picked, this is what I wanted to do this day, this is the shot I wanted to get, like, I didn't leave any room for, like, myself that day. I almost planned too much.
Yeah.
You know, like, so that was kind of, like, my worst shoot, because I was just not happy with the photos that I got. I guess like I did have one other shoot where the model and I had picked a location based off of something that was at that location, and then we got there and we couldn't find it.
Oh, that's the worst.
And it was a bit of a drive for both of us, and we still got some really good photos. I kind of felt bad as a photographer because I felt like I should have planned more for that. It was one of those situations where the model was like, hey, you know, like I really like this location, check out what I found here. And I was like, yeah, that works great. I looked at pictures on Google, you know, like looked up the location. I was like, all right, here's where I think that this location is. You know, I didn't go there beforehand. I was like, yeah, let's just do it.
Yeah.
You know, and then we get there, and what we were looking for, we walked around the whole entire location to come find it.
That is such bad luck.
So.
That is the worst.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes you overplan, sometimes you underplan.
Yeah.
We had to move closer because of the sound of the truck, and I tried to compensate by moving the lens around. But so a lot of what I discuss with my viewers is failure. It's failure in creativity, failure in art. I show my failures on my YouTube videos. I understand that a lot on Instagram photos, a lot of Facebook photos, things in other photographers' portfolios, you're seeing their best work, and it can be discouraging. So what would you say, what percentage of photos do you just throw away?
I would say like 90%.
90% get thrown away? That's about where I'm at too.
Yeah, you know, like the shoot that I did yesterday, I shot about 600 photos, and I felt like about 100 of them were keepers, but like that's just my 100 that I'm gonna go pick like 15 from.
15 out of 100.
You know,
15 out of 600.
Yeah, so you know, like I feel like that's what you're doing, and I don't mind shooting a ton of photos, you know, like, and that's part of my gear choices, you know, because I was like, I don't need a camera that shoots like 40 or 60 megapixels, you know, like, so it's not that big a deal to have 600, you know, like 24 megapixel photos. You know, like I know like a lot of photographers are like, oh, the more megapixels the better, you know, like that type of thing, and there's higher megapixel cameras out there, but you know, like the camera that I got is 24 megapixels, and that's part of the reason why I picked that camera, is because I wanted to be able to shoot a ton of photos and, you know, not take up a ton of space.
Yeah.
So
the megapixel count really only matters when you start blowing your images up. In that case, I generally shoot with a medium format film camera because the megapixels are in the hundreds. But if you had to give advice to a new photographer, someone starting out, someone discouraged, someone who's just trying to figure themselves out, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that there are a lot of really, really good resources at their fingertips in this day and age, and they should just start watching videos, start, you know, like taking online classes. Like one of the things that I feel like helped me the most between like my first shoot and my second shoot to have like a vast difference in quality was, you know, like I was looking for a photography course, and I found one. It was like $10. It was 30 hours, and it went over absolutely everything, all-in-one photography course, and I took it. Sometimes people will think, you know, like, oh, this is too basic for me, but like, do you really know the basics? I've talked to other photographers before, you know, a lot of time on forums, you know, like I like to help people, and, you know, I like to give advice to people, and you'll see people who don't know some basic things. Like one of the things I was explaining to somebody recently that, you know, I was like, this is something you should really know, is what happens when you shoot at 24 millimeters versus like 85 millimeters if you are, you know, like if you compose them like with the same frame.
Yeah.
The 85 millimeter will really like flatten out somebody's face, but you know, like maybe that's the difference. Like maybe somebody new went out, took pictures of their friend at 24 millimeters and their face looks all weird.
Yeah.
But they don't know why. Well, I feel like just having that little bit of education and learning and really getting the basics down and learning all the things that encompass photography, and like it's not that much, it's kind of like an endless ceiling. I feel like you're never going to be amazing at photography right away, but people who've been doing it for a long time, you know, like they still think that they have more things to learn, you know, and I guess that goes along with one of the philosophies I have on almost anything. The more of an expert you become in something, the more you realize what you don't know.
Yeah, so the more you know.
So
So yeah, and my piece of advice on that is, as always, go out and shoot, you guys. Practice makes perfect. They say that good practice makes perfect. So go learn your cameras, go out and shoot, try new things, learn composition. That's something we're gonna do some videos on here soon. And let's segue into about you. If you want to shoot with Nick Del Duca and you're in the northern Colorado area, how can someone find you?
So my Instagram is nmdelduca_photo.
And I'll link that down below.
And that's where I'm putting most of my stuff right now. I also have a Facebook page, which is NMD Photography. I don't know if I'm going to keep that name for it, but it'll still be the same page. And I'm kind of looking into other portfolio sites because, you know, like I feel like Instagram and Facebook, you know, only gets you so far. Like you need a professional portfolio. So I'm thinking about trying to find another spot. But all my, I try to link everything back and forth. So in my Instagram, I'll try to link to my YouTube and, you know, like everything else. And, you know, on Facebook, I try to link to Instagram. So I just try to, if you find me somewhere, you'll be able to find everything.
Yeah. And I'll link his YouTube down below as well. What kind of videos do you make?
So I've been kind of like trying to embrace the hybrid shooter mentality being a photographer, so that would be like a photo and video shooter. So when I go out on a photo shoot, I like to take clips of the models and put together like little video portraits. I also do some location scouting videos, some behind the scenes videos of my photo shoots, and maybe in the future I'll do some like gear reviews and travel videos, but for the most part on my YouTube right now it's video portraits of models.
Yeah, definitely go check out the video portraits, you guys. The pinup one is absolutely one of my favorites. It was shot down here in downtown Loveland. At one of the locations, we did some street photography out, so it's a lot of fun. Go and give him some love and subscribe to his channel. Very good location scouting advice given, very cool very cool video portraits. And make sure you guys like this video, make sure you guys comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you know right when I upload. At 500 subscribers, we are giving away a Jolly Look instant camera, so share the video if you enjoyed it, and I will catch you guys on the flip side. Bye!